It's a disco, it's a gallery, and then there's a lot of pretty people there. It's big, it's a big, big, big place, and it's hard to get in, but I never had a hard time getting in. But I've heard that it was hard to get in.
I noticed quite a bit of a change in Jean when he really started hanging out with Andy. Jean became a little bit out of touch with the old school fellas. I really missed the old Jean a lot because I didn't want to call him because I knew that I was going to get this indifference from him. And then I'd go to his art openings and I'd see him hanging out in the corner with a whole different crowd, people that would ignore me.
Andy was kind of in love with Jean-Michel. And what's it like being a woman with a homosexual man and a straight man and being the third wheel in a relationship? That's what it was like.
I didn't visit him as much, and I just felt, well, you know, I don't really belong there.
As he became such a star in New York, I think it became harder for him to work in New York City. Around that time, he realized that he really did like Los Angeles, and I think he also realized he could get a lot of work done here. So Larry's rented a studio for him in Venice, which he had for about 1.5 years, and he made quite a lot of art in that studio.
I used to love watching him paint. He didn't mind. I could sit there and watch him paint. And it was just beautiful the way he painted them. He was just like, you know, fast and elegant and...
There's a whole group of people out here that he felt really comfortable with.
I started just hanging out with him and filming him painting. And I probably filmed him over 2 or 3 years just hanging out in the studio painting with him. What Jean would do is he would go out at night and then he would come home and basically lock himself in for 2-3 days, just paint and paint and paint.
So do you have a specific method of working? Do you have certain hours that you always work? Do you?
I just have to, I'm usually in front of the television. I have to have some source material around me, you know, to
Like
work
what?
off. I don't know, you know, magazines, textbooks.
You don't mind having a lot of people around, too, while you're painting, do you?
I've discovered that I think I'd rather work alone more than anything, you know. I used to have assistants a lot around me, and then on days when they wouldn't come, it would be a lot more productive, you know.
He was going out a lot, and he was under a lot of pressure to paint because he owed paintings to his art collectors and his art dealers, and each painting that he did had to be a masterpiece because now he was being criticized in the international art world. I think it was getting harder and harder for him to go back and forth from being an adventurous 20-year-old to being a serious painter.
He told me that he was starting to use heroin at that point. He chose to use these drugs in order to concentrate, you know. I prefer a cup of coffee myself, but...
Put yourself in that position. Here's this guy that is 20, 21, 22, you know, living on the street, and within the course of 2 years, he became a really, really famous artist. Everyone started flocking around him. Can you imagine how that would be difficult to adapt to?
It's a conscious choice to begin taking heroin, knowing that everyone who messes with it gets fucked up.
Jean did want to be this burning ember.
In modern times, there is, for sure, whether you take Jackson Pollock, whether you take Vincent van Gogh, a romance about the notion of the artist as the person whose life is so intense that it's more than he can bear. And there is always the question of, is it a kind of self-fulfilling prophecy? And I think in particular in Basquiat's case, he identified very consciously with these heroes who had tragic endings.
He knew about the mystique of the drugs. How much of that was his own emulation taking it to the next level? So everything that happens to you then becomes heightened. But it's hard to go back to the real world.
It was a huge show for Jean. It was a triumph because he was in a show with the then, like, hottest contemporary artists, I think like Schnabel and the Italian, you know, Francesco Clemente, and me, Jean, we came outside and we were gonna go downtown to have dinner. So Jean throws his hand up, you know, he's waiting for a cab. And 1 cab, 2 cab, 3 cab, 4 cab, 5 cabs like pass. And Jean would sometimes get mad because the cab would pass, he'd try to run up, like try to pull the door open, like, you fucker, you know? But you'd feel these moments, like it was just a part of being black and living in New York City, like these things happen, you know what I'm saying?
Of all the arrests this year, none has received as much public attention as that of a young graffiti artist. On September 15th, 25-year-old Michael Stewart was arrested for scrawling on the wall of a subway station at 3 in the morning. 30 minutes later, Stewart lay in a deep coma at Bellevue Hospital's emergency room.
Michael Stewart was my friend, and very gentle, kind of effeminate young black man with dreads. He was going home one night on the L train to Brooklyn, where he lived with his parents, and he was beaten to death by 5 white police officers.
13 days after his arrest, Michael Stewart was dead.
It really affected Jean-Michel. He thought it could have been him, and it could have been.
A black artist in 1982, very different situation at that time.
He was something the art world had not seen before.
And you're seen as some sort of primal expressionism. Is that? I mean,
like an ape?
Well, let's
a primate.
Well, I don't know. Is that?
You said it. I don't. You said it.
Well, okay. You're.
Jean-Michel wasn't different. He was an artist just like most of the people at those scenes. But color makes you feel different. And you know people are looking at you a certain way. And all these different comments that you read about him had all that kind of language, encoded language in it. It never would have happened to a white guy.
The art world, which is full of liberal left-wing types, was feeling that they needed to make a bow in that direction. The disadvantaged, minorities, and so on. His contribution to art is so minuscule as to be practically nil.
About the story that you're always being locked in the basement in order to paint.
That's just has a nasty edge to it, you know. I mean, I was never locked anywhere. I mean, if I was white, they would just say artist in residence rather than say all that other stuff.
You know.
It's shocking to even think that it's not that long ago, the early 80s.
I've had this a lot. Most of my reviews have been more reviews on
your personality.
On my personality, yeah, more so than my work mostly.
How do you react to that sort of thing?
They're just racist, most of these people.
I know it affected him strongly. It was very tough on him.
There's this tendency to say, well, he's a primitive artist. But he was a kid who grew up in New York City in the 1970s and 80s. What the art world did to him reminds me of what happens at various points in black history to black artists. You become a representation for white people of all black people, because you're the only black person they know. The guy obviously spent a lot of time thinking about what his place in the world was and what's the place of black people and black men in the world. It's all in all his work over and over and over again.
I got to wear my long white robe one of these days, one of these days.
The power of his drawing focus to black experience he was not only revealing his own greatness, but he's pulling in his brothers and sisters too.
I'm gonna meet all of my friends one of these days.
He excavated the incredibly rich history of black people.
I'm gonna walk the holy road.
He's got an epic view of the history in his paintings. He's going back to slavery. He's going back to Robert Johnson. He's going back to Joe Louis.
One of these days.
Like a Native American shaman, he says in his paintings to us, I'm with you but the history walks with me too.
I'm gonna shake hands with my mother one of these days.
He's got a real sense of why he celebrates black kings is because the world doesn't celebrate black kings.
But I'm gonna live the life my mother lived, where I can meet her and shake her hand one of these days. One of these days.
And suddenly you're a black king. And now I'm here with the quote-unquote elite of this particular world who control your value. You're beholden to this world to make you what you are, but you're always aware that how I can become cold and what am I to them? I'm just last year's thing, and I'm just last year's interesting Negro.
Something started to happen to Jean. After a while, the party started to wear on him too. And he started to get a little bit more distrustful, a little bit more paranoid.
He distrusted different situations that he would be in sometimes and felt like he was being used.
You know, before you left paintings around all the time and like you leave these traces of things that you've done, are you more conscious of not doing that, or do you think
Definitely, because they've all ended up in auction.
People, yeah, I know people who sold those things.
Like everybody I know has sold those things, yeah.
He had more money than all of his friends, and so that made him suspicious.
More people started surrounding him for exploitive reasons. So partly there was a reason to be paranoid, and partly it was substance-induced. If you're using substances, it's very, very hard to stay grounded.
You go to a restaurant and they write about it in the Post on page 6, you know. And
do you like that?
I mean, sure, in some ways it's fun, yeah.
In some ways it's not fun?
I don't know, I like to remain a little reclusive and not be and be out there, you know, just to be brought up and to be brought down, you know, like they do to most of them.
Yeah, because sometimes they can turn on you, can't they?
Well, they always do. I can't think of one big celebrity type person who they haven't done that to.
They turned on you?
Here and there.
I think he wanted to have fun. I think he was having fun. He wanted to have fun, and he didn't want to get his feelings hurt. And if he just could have had a little bit more support in a deep sense, so he didn't feel so damn lonely and didn't feel so taken advantage of and got so confused, he just didn't have the tools to kind of navigate the sea. He went to Hana. And he went there with his father. I think he wanted to prove something to his father. He wanted to prove to his father that he was successful. Jean wanted his respect, and he wanted his confirmation.
So, of all the places that you've traveled to, which has been your favorite?
This is a boring answer, but I'm Hawaii.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Why's that?
Because it's because of the convenience and the wildness of it, I guess. Because you can buy anything you can buy in America. You can buy your favorite toothpaste, and then you can just drive for 2 hours and be, and they speak English, I guess. I don't know.
I remember Steve Torton once said something about you. Steve said, Jean-Michel is so cerebral and he lives so much in his brain that you could put him anywhere and it just wouldn't matter. It's like, it's not like you're unaware of your environment, but it just in some way doesn't matter because you're living in your brain and not.
I think it definitely makes a difference though if I'm here in Hawaii, I mean, I think I have to learn more and just not to work around what's around me, just work what I think, I guess. I shouldn't let what's around me affect my work at all, I think. Just work on what I normally work on.
Do you still see yourself as naive the way you described yourself as a kid?
Yeah.
You don't feel like...
So I'm always embarrassed of the past, always, you know. I always feel like if I knew more, I wouldn't have done that or something like this. Or...
I mean, naive, too, in relation to this incredibly high-pressure, competitive art world that you're part of. Do you maintain a distance from it so that you don't get cynical about it?
I don't think the art world is a thing or any secret with people. They're all mercenaries, trying to make as much money as they can, as fast as they can, most of them.
I always felt that LA was like a safety valve. Not that he could live his whole life here. He was hardly going to fit in here year in, year out. But I thought it was a great place for him to work where it didn't feel as much pressure and was more relaxed to paint. I thought when he moved back to New York and gave up the studio here, and I felt there was a shift there. And
Crosby Street got a little out of hand because everybody knew he was there. People would constantly be ringing the bell, or he was only on the second floor, so you could just be like, yo, Jean. And he kind of needed to move away from that. And Andy came through with this place on Ray Jones Street.
Andy loved Jean-Michel like a son almost, and at various times he was concerned about him, and I was too, so, you know, we sometimes talked about that.
I hung out with him and Andy several times during that period when they were very close. Andy was really giving great advice. Andy would, like, Jean, did you do this? And you spoke to your mom, and did you blah, blah, blah? He'd go through this list of things, and Jean would be like, yep, yeah, I did that, you know. So I was just like, okay, oh, wow, you know.
It's strange that if you're paranoid about people taking advantage of you and you think that people are exploiting you and all these things, that the one friend that you can call to be there on the lifeline to help you out of this paranoia of your friends taking advantage of you is Andy Warhol. But I think that with Jean, Andy really was there for him.
I'd never seen Andy so close with anyone, and I'd never seen Jean so close with anyone. This was these guys really loved each other. And Jean tried to do that collaboration show with him and thought he was going to get some kind of approval for doing this and be accepted, and it was a good thing.
The idea came to my mind while Jean-Michel was staying with me in St. Moritz. And I told Jean-Michel it would be great if he would do collaborations with an artist or two. And he said, oh, yeah, that might be a good idea. What do you think? I said, maybe with Warhol. He said, oh, that would be fantastic.
Their friendship and that relationship led to not just dabbling on trying out a few things together, but a large body of work.
Listening to what he had to say was probably the most fun. Seeing how he dealt with things was probably the best part. He's really funny. Mm-hmm. You know, he tells a lot of funny jokes.
I was there once when they were working, and Andy would get mad at Jean-Michel he would paint something, and then Jean-Michel would paint over it, and that was funny to see. Andy was more influenced by Jean-Michel than Jean-Michel was influenced by Andy, because Andy had given up drawing, and it was Jean-Michel that got him to draw again, and nobody could draw like Andy. It was amazing.
Yeah, we'll work for a year.
Would he come up with the idea for one, and then you'd come up with one, or how did you do the collaboration?
He would start most of the paintings. He'd start one, you know, put something very concrete or recognizable, you know, like a newspaper headline or a product logo, and then I would sort of deface it, and then I would try to get him to work some more on it, you know, and then I would work more on it. I would try to get him to do at least two things, you know. Mm-hmm. Because he likes to do just one hit, you know, and then have me do all the work after that. You know?
So did you have rules like you couldn't actually paint over his stuff, or?
No, not at all. We used to paint over each other's stuff all the time.
Yeah.
And luckily for the world, I suppose, they produced a spectacular body of works, including a very large painting with the mobile gas Pegasus and a cut of meat and a penguin. That's a true masterpiece.
He felt that if he could align himself not only as a friend of Andy Warhol's, but actually painting with Andy Warhol, this was going to take him to the next level, that he would finally get the respect that he was looking for. It was not what he expected.
Everybody attacked those paintings.
Jean-Michel embraced Andy at a period and a time when Andy was not very popular. Andy basically couldn't sell his work very well in the 80s.
There wasn't a big success. Everybody wrote like bad reviews about it. Tony did not sell one painting.
I don't know if Jean-Michel felt bad that he let Andy down, or if he believed what the press said, that Andy was taking advantage of him.
They said that he was Andy's lapdog and all these kind of things. It really hurt him. And
I remember he left, like the next day he left to Los Angeles or to Hawaii, and did not come back to Andy anymore, even afterwards, to paint.
They said he was finished. It was the attitude. And it was hard for us to understand.
Andy Warhol died last week.
1 week ago today, as he lay in a hospital bed following gallbladder surgery, Andy Warhol's heart stopped beating. His condition had been stable. No one had expected him to die.
I was so shocked because I always thought Andy would outlive all of us.
Jean-Michel was absolutely in a great shock and great state. I mean, all of us. It was really terrible. Andy dying was such a central figure of our life and of our time.
He had a falling out, and he never had a chance to repair that. And so I think it was extremely painful for him. He really went downhill after that.
Jean was devastated, and he was crying like hysterically. And some friends said, yo, man, you should go in there and talk to him, because everybody that went up to him and tried to talk to him, he just shut it down really abruptly. So they were like, And I was like, all right. And I went in, and I could just tell he was grieving. It was so bad.
Nobody like you.
Soon after that, he was so much more involved with drugs that became a center of his life.
Early on, he wouldn't admit that he was on drugs. He didn't want to talk about it.
Drugs, I just couldn't deal with that. And so I confronted him, and he said, don't tell my father. I said, well, it's not a question of not telling your father. I might tell him, but I might not, but it's your life.
I didn't know he was going that hard. Yeah. I was shocked to hear that.
I had just taken a job at Nell's, and he came in super late, and there was a bit of a scurry, and I didn't know who he was. He sat at my table, and he sort of arrogantly said, do you want to come and see some famous paintings? I'm a really famous painter. And I said, super famous people don't have to say they're famous. And so I went over, and his lights were off, or the electric bill wasn't paid. I mean, there wasn't a life going on in there. And we went back of the studio, and he started to pull out paintings. Eventually pulled a couple canvas and said, which one do you like better? And it was the double Elvis, which I now know was Warhol's, and I didn't then. And I said, you should do more like that. I really like that. And so he just kind of chuckled and said, you don't know who I am, do you? And I said, no. And so, as time went on, I realized, that's why he kept me around, because I hadn't the slightest clue really where it was.
I I was like kind of cheerleading because he didn't want to do the show. He wanted to cancel the show, and I was there like saying, "No, you can do it a week or a few days, and suddenly the opening." His sort of hallmark had been this incredible detail, and that show was very stark, but it was powerful.
Kind of more simplified. They were more spacious and ironic, and they had a different kind of head behind them, but they also kind of reduced them a little bit, which is typical of what a late artist does. It's like he was doing late work at the age of 27.
The last paintings were ambitious in size and in subject matter, and they were remarkable masterpieces. Very often, unwillingly, artists prophesied the future.
They were very good, but they were really kind of loose and kind of scary. He did not look good.
He was in a bad frame of mind because he thought the press was going to get him, and he was really worried about this article that Anthony Hayden Guest was writing about him for New York Magazine. He was upset about his relationship with his father. He was having a hard time with drugs. It was all kind of hitting him at once.
At that time, there weren't that many people around, very, very few. It's gallery, Glenn, Kevin, a couple people.
I would say that I think that he was a bit lonely. We were having lunch at the Odeon, and Jean-Michel's dad was there with some businessmen. So he's like, that's my dad over there. And he went up, he popped up, and he bounced over, and he was with his friends, which was us, and his dad was with his friends. He's like, hey, Dad, how you doing? Look, I'm taking all my friends out to lunch. I'm successful, blah, blah, blah. And Jean-Michel came back with his tail between his legs. His dad kind of iced him. Just those moments where I saw him, it just deflated him.
I've seen this with other celebrity friends of mine. Once they've encountered a certain amount of success, they tend to go back to find people that they knew before they were famous.
He came to my First Street apartment and rang the bell, and it was the middle of the night. And he got up, and who is it? Jean-Michel, can I come in? Is Suzanne there? Is Suzanne there? And he wasn't. Jonathan was not going to let him in. And I said, you have to let him in. Maybe he's in trouble, you know. And so I buzzed him in, but he never came up. And that was the last encounter I had with him.
And he showed up to my apartment over on First Street, and he yelled out the window. And he shows up with with a diptych. It said, to Samo, from Samo. And like a creep, I turned around and I sold those paintings. Yeah.
When he was still alive?
He was still alive.
One of the last times I saw him was New Year's Eve. He was sitting by himself at a bar looking very sad, but so sweet. And he just smiled at me. That image haunts me, because there he was, New Year's Eve, all by himself at this bar, the most famous artist of his generation.